So it's funny you said that. I literally wrote that down as like a next question. So what I'm picturing with 2 points, one is, so if I'm talking about, you're talking about edge work, for example, if you're doing, so as a, let's say you're 7 learning how to skate, what I don't want people to necessarily think is we're talking military camp where you got a line of cones up both sides of the ice, and for an hour, all you're doing is tight turns to the left with these kids the whole time. So my question was going to be, one, is it that? Are we talking about them doing that in some of these other systems? Is it literally like old school Russian style, like beat it into their heads? What is it? What does a modern skill development look like from what you've seen? And then tailing with that is um, the concept of more is always better. And how does that play into how these kids train? Is it literally 7 days a week they're on the ice? Because I think we get that, a little bit of that runaway train effect here, where it's like I need to go to my skill development in the morning, then I need to skate at lunchtime between classes at school, and then I need to go play my games at night and all day every day with a 10-year-old. So kind of those two things. How do you see those?
Yeah, so I'll start with sort of the frequency of being on the ice. I think all the science, all the data, all the results of the players that make it would suggest that playing multiple sports, having multiple activities, and that just doesn't mean like playing other sports. That means like putting your kid in an art camp, like letting them learn how to play the piano. Um, that stuff has a incredible influence on athletes. Case in point, like a lot of Division I football programs now, like Alabama, Ohio State, like they don't recruit you if all you've done is play football in high school. They want multi-sport athletes, and it's not because they're trying to do makes them feel good. It's because they have the data that says those players excel more, and they develop into better players. And I think the other part that we're seeing is just physiologically, like um, we got to remember, like you know our bodies are like a machine, and like any other machine, if you drive them too hard, they will break down. I mean, it doesn't take. I mean, I would encourage any parent here, just do a quick Google search on like there's 12-year-olds getting sports hernia surgeries now. That did not happen 20 years ago. It just did not happen. Those are all overuse injuries, and it's not just in hockey; it's in every sport. You're getting teenagers getting Tommy John surgery because they've been pitching nonstop since they were like little kids. So I think there's one part. It's like, hey, again, the data would suggest that more isn't better. I think deliberate practice is really important. I think creating space for your kids to, if you're fortunate to live in a part of the world where you get access to, outdoor rinks, for example, like just let your kids go play. And I would say, just as an aside, another thing that we have found with the top organizations in the world is they create space for play. There's no adults on the ice, and their kids just get to go out there without any constraints and just play. And we don't think of that as development. That is absolutely um, development. And I think that I think as for families and parents out there, and for obviously anybody running development programs as well, I think it's just being really clear on the outcome and and making sure that you have a plan, because we live in a system, especially in North America right now, that if you want your kid on the ice twice a day, you can do that, right? And I'm a parent, right? Like we all want to do what's best for our kids, and sometimes doing more feels like the right thing. I just think it's really important to say, like, we're gonna have a plan, we're gonna have a schedule, and we're gonna stick to that, and we're just gonna be, you know, we're not gonna get distracted by all the other things out there.
Yeah, because I think it turns into like that keep up with the Joneses kind of thing too, right? Like you get when there isn't clear direction or a clear curriculum, or if you go to your minor hockey organization and they say this is what it's going to be, then it kind of ends up going back to the parents. Like they kind of have to figure it out. Like what should I be doing? Where should I be going? What should I be? How should I be training? And even for young kids, it's like, well, Billy over there has his private skating coach, and maybe we should check that out. And it's like now you start getting pulled in all these different directions because there are so many skills coaches and all these different things, right?
Eric, do you have kids?
No.
This is the most powerful drug in the world. You hear comments all the time in sports. It's like they're just trying to get their kid in kid to the NHL. I don't think that's the case. I think most parents are rational enough to know that, that is a pipe dream. It's the 1% of the 1%. I don't think parents are spending all this money and time with their kids because they want them to get to the NHL. there is a drug where if you're at a hockey rink, a minor hockey game, and your kid gets a hat trick, that rush of going into that lobby after the game and having all the other parents be like, "Oh man, Eric had a good game today. Wow, Eric's so good."
Yeah.
I'll tell you
Yeah,
what,
that's interesting, man. Yeah.
for any parents out there, if you don't believe in that, you're full of shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a drug, and I think that really drives people. You want that self gratification, and you feel like, oh, I'm doing my kid. You know how it's great for my kid. And again, I'm a parent too. Like we're all human beings, and that's a natural reaction. My point of the story is that we have to guard against that. If you're the adult, then you got to be the adult because just because your kid wants candy all the time doesn't mean you give them candy. Just because there's an opportunity to get on the ice all the time, you got to be the adult and say, hey, like we've defined what the right amount is, and we're cool with that.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective because we get so many comments from people that say that exact thing. Like these parents just want to get their kids to the NHL, and I think that's a good way of putting it. Like I've never heard someone say it in those terms. Like it's just like a drug for parents to get that pat on the back about like your kid's doing a great job and we love your kid and he's the best player and this kind of stuff. And then the other element too, like I had a parent explicitly say this to me one time, like hockey is our family entertainment because that's what we do every weekend, all weekend. So we want it to be good. We want it to be.
That's another great.
You know
point.
what I mean? So like between those two things, I don't think it's so much. I think Johnny's getting to the NHL. It's more just like that's where I'm at right now, and I'm getting sucked into it, right?
And listen, man, it's everything. Like my little guy is going to be 6 next month. Like when he was 3 and did a finger painting, like we thought he was Picasso. We put it on the fridge. We bragged about it. Took pictures, sent it to the grandparents. Like it's normal, right?
Yeah, that's so funny. That's so funny. So on that, I know you and I were talking a little bit on the weekend about how a lot of the questions that we get, and for our audience, they ask the coaches and the parents ask the same questions. So whether it's a training thing, a coaching thing, just a day-to-day thing, how they deal with certain circumstances, they'll say, hey, I'm a parent of this age kid, or they'll say, hey, I coach this age group. And then the next line is the same question. Doesn't matter who it was, right? So for you guys, from the coach's side perspective, because I believe that coaching and parenting are much the same. You can kind of flip a coin, whether you call it parenting, coaching, it's kind of the same thing. So from the coach's side perspective, for the parents listening, what is it about the coach's site that you think is specifically valuable? Where if I'm a coach and go on there, if I'm a parent or I go on there, what do I find? What am I learning? How's it going to help me navigate whatever I'm going through with my kids, maybe?
Yeah, for sure. And I would just say this, like the one thing that I've come to appreciate about coaching, and I think, in parenting as well, is that when done right, coaching is going to bring out the best version of you, and parenting will do the same thing. Like whatever bad habits you have before you have kids, you're probably going to get rid of them because your kids are going to be the number one priority. And same thing with coaching. If you're in it for the right reasons, it's, you're going to show up the best version of yourself at the rink. I think as far as what we do, I would say like specifically with the coaches, when I was coming up, every coach had a binder, and in that binder was like, drills, scribble on practice plans, and drills are great. And I would say like if we looked at our search queries, it's drills, drills, drills. People love drills. Coaches love drills. You know, drills are like it's like handing you and I each a paintbrush and a palette with a bunch of different colors on it. Just because we have those tools doesn't mean we're gonna both go out and paint the same picture. Like the drills, I think are largely overrated. I think what we do at the coaches site is we provide the why and the how. It's how to teach. So an example of that might be like if we had a group of coaches in here right now and I said, how do you teach crossovers? I can just about guarantee that some coaches are going to put their hand up and they're going to be like, oh, you just like skate around the circle and you cross over. Then you go to the next circle and you cross over. That's not how you teach crossovers. You teach crossovers because you explain to kids they've got to get their inside shoulder up and back. You teach them because they align their belly button with the inside knee. You teach them when they cross over to point their toe that they imagine cutting their laces with their skate that's crossing over. You have very specific teaching cues, and that's what I think that we provide. I think from a parent's perspective, I think we give them some peace of mind because I think they get to come in here and they get to say, you know what, like we got the best coaches in the world. And we're fortunate, man. Like we work with the best of the best, and it's a privilege. But I think it gives them peace of mind when you got the best people in the world that say, hey, your kid just needs to focus on this right now. Or you don't need to worry about D zone coverage. You don't need to worry about the wins and losses. Like if you want to create the best experience for your kid and at the same time give them the best opportunity to be the best player they can be, then slow down, work on the fundamentals, and and do them again and again and again because reps were moved out.